Hi, this is Jane Honeycutt, and I'm going to talk to you about technology and SACS standards, specifically related to Northeast State and its most recent process. SACS itself has a mission, and that mission is to enhance educational quality throughout the region and also to improve effectiveness of institutions by making sure that each institution is meeting the standards that have been established by the higher education community. And after looking at this closely, I think that SACS is meeting its mission. Technology is mentioned early in the SACS handbook and is defined as a formal education process in which the majority of instruction, that is, interaction between students and instructors and among students, occurs when students are not in the same place. Of course, this means a lot of things. Synchronous or asynchronous classes, internet classes, one-way, two-way transmissions, closed-circuit cable, telecourses, internet or ITV courses. So at Northeast State, we have almost all of these, but for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to focus mainly on online courses. At Northeast State, we have still most of our students in the traditional classroom. We have quite a significant number of students taking internet courses, over 1,000 students, so that's very much worth our attention. When we look at SACS, SACS is evaluating the college in four different categories: the principle of integrity, core requirements, comprehensive standards, and federal requirements. So I'm going to focus my attention on those four categories with regard to online learning. With regard to the principle of integrity, the basic contract is very simple. All the parties agree to deal honestly and openly with one another, because the whole purpose of this is not for us to hide flaws, to make ourselves look good, but for us to look honestly at ourselves, to find not only our strengths, but also places where we need to work harder in order to provide the high quality instruction, education that we want to provide. The integrity in this accreditation process involves a peer review. So we are engaging in getting the professional judgment of commonly accepted sound academic practice. That's what we want to do here, and we are evaluated by our peers to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing. When looking at core requirements, we see that SACS does use the guidelines for evaluating distance education. And so we look at our mission and whether or not online learning is appropriate to that mission. We have to look at our effectiveness and make sure that these offerings are evaluated and that the results of those evaluations are used to see if we're achieving learning goals. We have to examine resources and make sure students have adequate resources. And we have to focus a lot of attention on faculty and whether or not the faculty are carefully selected, appropriately trained, and frequently evaluated. With regard to comprehensive standards, we have to, as an institution, identify the expected outcomes. We have to assess the extent to which we have achieved those outcomes. But not only that, we have to provide evidence of improvement. So when we're looking at ourselves, we have to look at our programs to make sure that the students are achieving what they're supposed to achieve. We have to examine learning outcomes. We have to make sure that there's administrative support and that there is academic support and student support with all of these online or distance offerings. When we look at Northeast State and their comprehensive standards, we had a finding from our off-site team that said there was little or no evidence that off-campus sites and technologically delivered distance learning were included in the compliance audit that led to the institution certification. So they looked at what we said about ourselves and said we needed evidence. So they requested that evidence in the focus report, and we certainly did supply that information. When we went back to provide evidence, we used the 9 hallmarks of quality provided by the guidelines for evaluating distance learning. So we examined whether or not our programs were appropriate to our mission, whether or not they were part of our regular planning and evaluation process, whether or not they were incorporated into our system of governments and our academic oversight. With regard to learning, we had to examine whether or not our curricula was coherent, cohesive, and comparable in academic rigor to traditional classes. We had to assure that the effectiveness was evaluated and that includes learning outcomes, and that we use the results of the evaluations to enhance the attainment of the goals. We had to make sure that the faculty were responsible and qualified and effectively supported. We also had to examine resources. Is there effective student and academic support for this kind of offering? Does the institution provide resources to support and expand its online learning offerings if it's appropriate to expand them? Or is the institution assuring the integrity of these offerings? When we looked at ourselves then, we saw that the online offerings were appropriate to our mission, a lot of which has to do with access, and specifically in our mission, it states that programming and comprehensive support services are offered through varied delivery systems and at multiple sites throughout the primary service area. In terms of planning, we have a technology planning and oversight committee that assesses technology planning from a whole college-wide perspective. This committee consists not only of the president, vice presidents, and deans, but we have student representatives so that we can ensure from everyone's perspective that the technology enhances student learning. We have also established a good deal of faculty training. We have a professional development committee that does devote a significant amount of time to providing training regarding distance education. Also, new instructors have a course development manual that includes best practices for developing an online course. In addition to technical training, we offer mentoring so that instructors new to online learning work with someone who's experienced in order to get some good hints as to the best way to go about it. With regard to comparable curricula, Northeast State says that all the internet courses are synchronous. We make no distinction between traditional programs delivered via distance learning or with regard to program content. Anything that is happening online is going to be the same as anything we're offering in a traditional format. With regard to support services, again, Northeast State does not distinguish between online students and traditional students with regard to the services that they're provided with. They may get some additional training to ensure quality, but they have access to the same services as any student. We also have to examine interaction very carefully. So at Northeast State, we saw that our classes meet 3 to 4 class meetings per semester, regardless of being online. They are synchronous. The instructors have access to students during and after class. Our online instructors are required to be in the office the same amount of time as they would have been in class had it been a traditional setting. They are also, in addition to that, required to keep office hours, and of course they're available by phone and email, as well as through the discussion board on D2L. And so this allows students to have anytime, anywhere access to course materials. With regard to faculty oversight, we have processes in place to ensure that faculty are assuming responsibility and exercise oversight of all programs. The courses, internet courses are proposed, they're then reviewed. The syllabi are submitted to an internet review team of the Distance Education Subcommittee, and the team evaluates each course to ensure that the specific formats, the information, and that there's appropriate interaction. Federal requirements for distance education focus on something different. One of their big concerns is student identity, so they require logins, passcodes, proctored exams, etc. And they're also worried about privacy as well as cost, so they look at this from a different angle. In conclusion, I do believe the self-study process works very well because it gives the institution an framework on which to create sound academic courses so that we as instructors and students both understand that they're getting high quality learning in this same alternative environment. Thank you very much.